It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to Dirty Driving.
We are so excited because we have a special guest today for our latest episode of our For Our Next Guest series.
I am beyond excited about this, Katie, so I think we should just forget all of our normal bullshitting and just jump right into it. What do you think, Katie?
Yeah,
okay,
sounds good.
Today I am very, very, very excited about this guest. She is an author of many books, but specifically a Formula One romance novel. Yes, Katie and I have had the pleasure to read this one. She is an RWA Rita finalist, an Amtrak Writing Fellow, and the winner of the George C. Polk Award for Environmental Journalism. She spent more than a decade as a reporter for the Associated Press in Florida, covering everything from the environment to crime to politics. She even had the chance to interview Rubens Barrichello. She left her career of journalism to write fiction, both romance and cozy mysteries. Today, please welcome the author of Drive, Tamara Lush.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is really exciting. This is actually my first racing and book podcast. I've done other book podcasts. I've never done a racing podcast. And so this is really wonderful.
We are so excited to have you. I will be shamelessly admitting that I have told basically everyone who will listen that I get to interview an author today.
I love it. I love it. This is the energy we need in the world.
Yes. And I've been talking about this book nonstop because let's be real, we all love a good raunchy novel and we all love a good Formula One novel. So it's honestly the perfect combination of everything that we love. And we're just so excited to talk to you and hear about your journey as a writer and how you became a fan of Formula One and all the things.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great. It's all my things that I love in 1 hour, 2 hours.
So Katie and I were lucky enough to be gifted this book by my good friend Erin, who has a book Instagram, which I would have to say, thanks to COVID and TikTok and everyone being at home and kind of resurgence of reading, has become such a big part of Instagram now. But she was lucky enough to get a copy of this book. And so we're in a book club together, and she was lucky enough to, I guess not lucky enough, she was smart. I'm going to go with smart enough to say, hey, Megan, I know you have a Formula One podcast. I think you need to read this book. So I then proceeded to read it in like under 48 hours, like I do with all books that are like I'm glued to. And then, of course, I immediately was like, Katie, you got to read this book. Cancel everything, read the book. So this is like amazing that we get to talk to you about this book and just like hear about your journey.
Great. Yeah, this book has been a journey. This particular book has been a big journey. I wrote it. It was probably my third or fourth book that I wrote, and I wrote it probably close to 6 years ago. So, and it just was published this year.
Wow. Did you write? Yeah. So let's begin. Before we jump into this book, let's back it up and talk about the first thing is what made you interested in Formula One to even begin with?
Oh, well, both my husband and father love Formula One. My father's loved Formula One for years and years, and he's traveled all over the world to see Formula One races. And I'm married to a man from Italy, so he obviously loves Ferrari. And we have gone to Montreal twice, and we went to Indianapolis when Formula One was still in Indianapolis. So I've seen 3 Formula One races and 1 MotoGP race. So I love the sport. I think it's really glamorous. I think it's really, I think it's just exciting. I think auto racing in general is exciting, but Formula One has this sheen of glamour that's perfect for romance.
Who was your father's like favorite team, favorite moment? Do you know any of like his kind of favorite things?
Oh, well, he actually, Michael Schumacher, almost certainly. And he saw Michael Schumacher race several times. I think he saw Michael Schumacher race in Monza and win in Monza one year. He also went to a night race at one point in Singapore. He's really into it. In fact, he just messaged me today and was like, we're on the wait list to get tickets in Amsterdam, or whatever the circuit name in Amsterdam, close to Amsterdam is. So he's planning that for next year and wants to know if we want to go, which we would love to, but I don't know if we can. So
Katie was just saying she likes the resort town, so we might have it on our list too.
Yep.
Yeah, we might have to meet you there, and we can get a little beach nice. Cabin together. And
I would love to see European races. I think that would be really exciting.
So your first race was Montreal, correct?
It just froze for a minute.
Oh, you're good. So your first race you saw was Montreal, correct?
Yes. The first race I saw was Montreal, and that's when I got the idea for the book.
Okay, so...
Oh my gosh, tell us more about that.
That must have been I started writing romance in 2014. So probably it was 2015 or 2016. I would say most likely it was 2015 that we saw the race at the Gilles Villeneuve's circuit in Montreal. And I remember, we were sort of just sitting there watching practice, and, it was hot and I was on the lawn, and, being there is really exciting. But it's also, there's a lot of waiting, obviously, while while things happen, especially during practice and during qualifying. And there's just a lot of sitting around and waiting between things happening. And so I was really new to writing romance then. I'd written a couple of romances, and I thought about what it would be like to write a Formula One romance. And it just so happened that I had finished recently a Formula One romance written by Harlequin that had been written years and years before, called His Private Mistress. And it was this very classic Harlequin romance about this alpha, this very alpha male Italian driver. And I kind of started to think about a storyline with an Italian driver. And I kind of spun it out, the one that I loved, His Private Mistress, she was a reporter, which was, great because I was a reporter. And so I love that book so much that I thought I would write my own Formula One romance. But as you can see in the book, I don't call it Formula One. I call it Formula World for trademark purposes.
So you're there, you see the race.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you decide to make the female lead a part of the pit crew? Was there ever a conversation in your head about, or maybe on paper, or maybe a sketch about, she should be maybe just the owner's daughter, or should she just be a fan, or should she be a PR person? What was there a conscious choice to make her part of the men's?
Yeah, there was. I think I had read an article, or was sort of reading on my phone as we were sitting there about women in Formula One. And I think maybe I read something about either a woman who was on a pit crew, but maybe not, or how the lack of women in Formula One. And I wanted her to just be sort of a regular team member. I didn't want her to have a lot of power on the team specifically, even though she herself, the character Savannah, obviously grew up with a lot of privilege. Her father is very wealthy and is in the sort of automotive industry. I wanted her to sort of be pretty scrappy and kind of young and want to learn from the bottom up. The book that you read is very different from the book that I initially wrote. Not very different, but it's longer than the book I initially wrote. The first version is up on Wattpad, actually, my publisher. So Wattpad's a story sharing site for those of your listeners who don't know. And so it's a slightly different book. There are some slightly different characterizations in the final published work than the initial book. But I wanted her to be someone who wanted to work her way up on a team. And I wanted her to be in a traditionally masculine job in Formula One, since there aren't at that time, I don't think there were any or not very many women in sort of those roles in Formula One.
So you make it very clear that you're I want her to start at the bottom, and I want to have this journey of her through what is a male dominated sport, even to this day. You know, even we see some glimmers of change. I think immediately top of my head, we have Susie Wolf. So how was it writing and developing from a like woman's journey in a man world? Was that harder? Was it easier? Was it tricky?
You know, I think that, you know, there's sort of two parts to that. You know, when you write a romance, like good romances aren't just about, you know, the heroine has to have a need and a desire that goes beyond getting a man. So that it shouldn't, romances shouldn't hinge just on the heroine's desire for love. Like she should want something more, I think anyway, she should want something more in life than to snag a rich and handsome husband. So I kept that in mind as I was writing. And, you know, I guess it was like I did a lot of research about the actual job of tire changer. A lot of that didn't get in. You know, there's sort of the iceberg, what you don't see in a book and what you do see in the book. And a lot of it is underneath the water and you never see it. But I wanted her to have that journey, and I wanted her to desire something other than a relationship. I didn't want her to set out at the beginning of the book wanting a relationship. She very much really doesn't care about a relationship at the beginning of the book.
I think that's why I liked it so much. I think that's one of the things I liked so much is that the romance wasn't a thing. It wasn't the point of it until halfway through-ish, where you're like, oh, now she's interested in this. Because in the beginning, she's constantly like, okay, like, I just kind of want to, I kind of just want to be on the pit crew and be one of the people. And I want to be part of this world and learn in this world. It wasn't like, ooh, Dante, hot, let's date him from page one.
Right. Yeah, that was very much a conscious choice. And I also, I mean, obviously this book, it hinges on a very popular romance trope, which is a fake relationship trope. And I tried to explore that through the lens of, I mean, I think we all know that sports and probably Formula One to a very great degree is about packaging and the idea of fame and what's in the press and rumors and the media. I worked in the media at the time that I wrote this. So sort of the idea that they would be doing a lot of this for the press, kind of that whole concept intrigued me as well.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot while reading. I think about how when the drivers do interviews, they always have their marketing guide next to them. And we've seen Charlotte stop Lando from saying things that he shouldn't say and things like that. And they train them to basically perform on this mega stage of being a leader in the top sport, and to have shaped that in the story told another story of Formula One itself, of, you know, not everything that you see is true. Some things are rumors, some things are drama. And I think just as the sport has many layers, this book has many layers that invites people into understanding more about the world of Formula One. And not only that, but it's inspiring to us women who want to work in Formula One and want to have a role as part of the team and maybe want to be in a position that has traditionally been held by men.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I've never really, even though, as you said, I interviewed Rubens Barrichello, I actually have not ever covered sports as a reporter. I covered a lot of crime, lots and lots of crime. I have a pen name where I write mystery novels. So I covered a lot of politics, but the more you cover of certain things, the more you realize like how packaged things are for public consumption, and sports and entertainment is very much that. You know, there's a lot that goes into the packaging. And I think that's why some ways it's so fascinating to see a driver like Lewis Hamilton, and why he fascinates people. One of the reasons is because he does not operate in a very packaged way. He kind of speaks his mind in a very blunt, I mean, he obviously has the power and the authority to do so, given who he is in the sport. But I think that's one of the things that's fascinating about him, is that he does not operate in a very pre-planned, packaged way.
And I wonder if that comes, like, if he earned that right, quote, like that came with, hi, now I've won 3, now I've won 4. At some point, what I say isn't going to get me in trouble with a contract because I've backed it up with achievements. Like, if you have to really truly like earn the right to speak your mind and not work in a package.
Right. I suspect so. I have not done enough. I mean, I've, watched the documentaries on Michael Schumacher and read a lot about him. I don't know how outspoken he was after he had won a lot of championships. I know that he had definitely a lot of confidence, obviously, but I don't know if he was quite as outspoken, nor maybe did he need to be, because Lewis is who he is, who is a Black man. And so he might feel, differently about speaking out than maybe Michael Schumacher did.
I do wonder about that. That's actually an interesting parallel that I haven't really looked into at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to kind of go back to something that you had mentioned a minute ago that I thought was interesting. So you said you did a lot, the iceberg analogy, all the research below. Where did you go to kind of do all of your behind the scenes F1 research for this book?
I just read a lot. I had a book. I don't have the name. My husband had a book about, like, I think it was called Inside the Mind of an F1 Driver. It's kind of old. I think I read that. I just read a lot on the internet, and watched everything I could. I wrote this long before Drive to Survive came out. So, although when I was editing it, Drive to Survive had come out. So I watched some of that, to refresh. Well, because I wrote the initial version, and then, it went on Wattpad later, and then they decided, years after that, basically to publish it as a print book. So it evolved a little bit. So I did watch Drive to Survive when I was in the editing process, and I'm continuing to watch that actually because I'm writing the 3rd book in the series, which is about Max Becker, I'm actually finishing that up this week, and Max is in this book. He's a young driver in this book, a secondary character. And so I'm writing his love story for book 3.
How does he differ from Dante, if you can give us any hints?
Oh, well, even though he comes off in book 1 as very sort of like a party guy and just happy-go-lucky, carefree, as it turns out, he had his heart broken by the woman he, lost his virginity to in his first year in Formula One. And now she's his team owner. So things happen, they just happen. So he's actually a big squishy marshmallow.
I love that. Our big squishy marshmallow on the track is Daniel Ricciardo these days.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about your writing process. I'm really intrigued by this. So when you sit down, you've decided, okay, I'm going to write an F1 romance novel. I have some outline sketches, at the end, they're going to end up together. Obviously, that's how all romance books end. How do you go from like page 1 to the ending when they're together? Do you script it all out? Do you have a master plan, or do you just kind of like, okay, now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that.
So there's 2 philosophies in writing. There's the plotters and there's the pantsers, and the pantsers fly by the seat of their pants. And I am very much a plotter. I actually have like software that I write out a timeline. I plot each chapter as I write. I'm not as I write. I plot each chapter before I write. I need to have a roadmap of where I'm going, because if I don't, I get lost and then I lose interest in the book and I can't write and I stop and start and it's not good. So for books, I also write serial novels, which are they're kind of a different animal and they're longer. But generally I like to have a map where I'm going. So, and I may find out things about I almost always find out things about the characters as I write. They kind of reveal themselves to me, but I have sort of a template. And the good part about a Formula One romance is that they are going from place to place to place. So you can kind of think, oh, where will they be next? And what will they be doing at that stage of their relationship? So, and that was very much a part of the plot in Drive. They spent the entire season together. So, which, there were some challenges there because obviously the season is very long. So I had to fast forward through a lot of different places. But that gives it kind of an inherent structure that makes it a little easier.
I think it's so cool that it panned a season, but it doesn't feel too long in the book. It feels like it moves at what I think is a good pace. Like I got through it in 2 days, which is
okay.
I read, when I get into a book, I read it quickly. So that's not really a judgment on fastness or anything, but it's just, I think it felt like it was the right amount of pace. Like it gave enough time for her to develop, him to develop, but then you also got to like the press element, the F1 element, and then you finally kind of got to the romance stuff in like the last third.
Okay. I'm glad.
I have a confession to make. I sat and I read this whole book in one sitting. I got on the train. I live in Chicago. I was headed to St. Louis for the weekend. So it's about a 5.5 hour train trip. And I actually ended up sitting next to someone I knew from high school, like just by the fate of the world. And I started reading. I got comfy. I, pulled my book out, talked to her for a while, probably started reading 30 minutes in, and I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop reading it. I wanted to know what was going to happen because like all girls who are fans of Formula One have had a dream at some point, whether it's a real dream, whether it's a daydream, whether it's just us thinking about being with a Formula One driver. So yeah, I read it in about 5 hours, and my friend from high school was blown away that I finished a book in one sitting. And I was like, listen, it's Formula One and it's a love story and it's so good.
That's amazing.
You gotta read it. And it's just another aspect it's another way to learn more about the sport too, which I think is great because we've got the Drive to Survive, we've got the races, we've got the new Alfa Romeo Drive to Survive miniseries, but now we can read fiction about it too.
Yeah,
which is great.
I also wanted to try to stay true to the sport. I have read a couple of Formula One romances, and I think that I wanted to stay true to the sport in that I did not want an American champion because there aren't any. The Formula One books that I've read all involve an American champion, which doesn't ring true to me. So I wanted there to be a really international flair, and I understand that Savannah is American. And the initial reason why I chose that pairing actually was because initially I was trying to get this published by Harlequin. Harlequin actually asked for a full, like almost right away, and my agent sent it, and then they passed on it. So they felt that Dante was a little too alpha male. They felt he was a little too arrogant. And then I actually had another conversation with another publisher. At the time, the book was only 50,000 words. It expanded greatly over time. But the second publisher that was interested basically was like, we really like it, but can Savannah be in a less masculine job? And I was like, no. No, that would change the whole book. So I didn't go with that publisher. And I'm glad I didn't.
No, I'm really glad you didn't because there's been so much conversation in the last, I would say 3 years, maybe really 2.5 if you talk about like the half COVID season, about women becoming more a part of F1 and it being normalized that women can talk about it, they can write about it, they can read about it, they can be engaged in it, they can be fans of it their entire life. They could be fans of it because of their dad. They could be fans of it because of their mom. Like all of these parts of it. And I like that you were like, no, she's not going to be the PR lady. She's not going to be the lawyer for the driver or the team or the daughter of the team. She is going to be an integral part of the team in a role that is traditionally being held as a male role.
Right. And I thought about her being a driver. I thought about that, but I figured that was almost even more unrealistic than her being on the pit crew. Even though there have been, I understand, test drivers and other people other women on teams. I wanted her to just be in like a very, just a job that that a person would have on a pit crew. I didn't want her to be the star because she didn't want to be the star, like her character was a beauty pageant queen. She was from the South, and she no longer wanted to be the star. She wanted to just learn and be who she was.
It's funny that you mentioned the beauty pageant part because I was like skimming through it again today and like going to like parts that I had marked, and I forgot about the whole conversation where Dante in the beginning's like, she used to be a beauty pageant queen and now she's here. I kind of love that you made her in such a feminine role. And then her, like, over the course of her life before the book, she transitioned from this very like feminine beauty pageant, makeup, hair, dresses, all the things to this, hi, I now want to wear overalls that everyone else is wearing. And my hair is not even showing, and I'm not wearing makeup, and I'm sweaty, and I'm covered in oil, and I'm lifting tires.
Yeah, like she just wanted to be who she was, and I think that that's what's really important in my books is that to show that women don't have to be physically perfect, and they don't have to be even really perfect in any way. They're we contain multitudes. We're not all. Plenty of women are all about makeup and nails and hair. Some women are not. Like, I do not look like this every day. I just happen to look like this today. Like there are times when I think that we need to show women being women in all, and not just this idealized version of women.
I also like that. I mean, this is probably going to be, some people aren't going to like this statement, but I do like that people, like even female fans of F1, like F1 romance novels. Because I think that in itself is kind of like wait, you want to sit on a podcast and you want to talk about F1 and stats and have this intelligent conversation about race strategy, but at the same time, you want to read like a romance novel.
We can do it all. Our brains can handle both things.
You can, in fact, be both humans.
You can. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for any occasion.
Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs for your favorite F1 moments.
From Ricardo's Monza shoey to Sebastian's Australian scooter ride.
From Lewis's Brazilian comeback to Carlando's round of golf.
Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands,
gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you are comfortable wearing anywhere.
Right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, and polos using the code Dirty Driving.
That's Dirty Driving, all capitals, no spaces, for 15% off their entire clothing range.
Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere.
Okay, so I have some questions about Dante that Katie and I have been wondering. Okay. First one, was it important for him to be at the end of his career?
I think so. I wanted him to be older. I like a good age gap romance. So I wanted him to be a little older and to be at the end of his career. Yes. I thought it was important.
Was it important for him to be Italian? Because we think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I've written a lot of Italian heroes. I mean, my husband is from near Naples, so I happen to love Italian men. If Netflix is listening to this and they would like to make this into a Netflix Italia, call Michele Morone from 365 Days. I think he'd be great. So that's just my little plug to Netflix if they're listening. I mean, can you imagine Michele Morone? Okay.
Wait.
Okay.
Oh my
Come on now.
God.
Like, picture that, right?
I'm so in.
No,
Yes.
I am.
Like every woman
in.
on the planet would
I will write him a letter.
Tag him on Instagram, whatever. Like, let's.
I'm going to.
I mean,
yeah, I will shamelessly DM him. I will
do
write
what
him
you
a
need to
letter.
Yes, I will say there is an option for this book in Germany. So fingers crossed. I'll take also a super hot German actor for Dante. So,
I'm so into that as well.
Yeah. Whatever.
I'm so into it. Doesn't need to be in English either. I'm willing to read subtitles.
Absolutely. Same.
Okay, so this one, I don't know if you can give us an answer on this one, but I'm going to ask it. Is Dante perhaps based on any real-ish driver or a combination of some drivers?
I would definitely say, especially the year I was writing this, I would definitely say Fernando Alonso.
I was getting some Alonso vibes.
Megan, you were right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were right,
I was
Megan.
getting like some Alonso vibes, but in a weird way, I was getting some like Kimi Räikkönen vibes.
Oh, actually, I would say that Max Becker has more Kimi Räikkönen vibes.
I'm so in.
I'm excited.
More Iceman vibes. I'm so here for
I'm
it.
so excited.
Kimi, the whole, crashing out and then walking onto his yacht is definitely party boy vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about so there's going to be a second one and then there's going to be a third one.
Yes. So the second one is called Crash, and it's actually about, it's a little different. It's not a Formula One romance. It's about Savannah's brother, who used to be a semi-pro kind of MotoGP kind of racer, but he is a CEO of the family's company. So we see Savannah and Dante in book 2. They're happy and they have their child. It's many years later. So, but the book is about Savannah's brother and an intern in his office. So it's more of a traditional office romance. It's called Crash, because it's kind of in the same family. And then Burn comes out in 2024, and that's about Max Becker.
Oh my gosh, so exciting. So we're going to see Dante in book 2. Tell us a little bit about how he's doing in his, like, if you care to share, in like his post-retirement
He's
days.
Very happy and devoted to Savannah. Like, his whole life is devoted to Savannah and their daughter. Yes, he is.
Oh,
he
wonderful.
has become a big giant marshmallow.
I like that, because I will say the one thing about F1 is that you only ever really see the drivers. I feel like maybe we get a little bit more now because there's just more like social media content, but you really just only ever see them as like, hi, I'm a race car driver. I like to go fast. I like to take risks. I'm devoted to this career. This is my life. Very much my life. I mean, we just had Sebastian Vettel, who retired, saying like, I would like to go now be a father and like a husband. I want to go now be a family person, because I have had one, but I haven't really gotten to be a part of that world. So it's cool to see in a fictional way that there is more than just what we see 22 races out of the year or 22 weeks out of the year, whatever.
Yeah, I can imagine it must be very difficult, for them in some ways. I mean, obviously they're incredibly wealthy, but they, from the time that they're fairly young until, let's say, 30-ish, give or take, they live this very fantastical life. And what do they do afterward? And I wonder about that. And I think probably the more well-adjusted ones are like Sebastian Vettel, who say, like, I want to be part of my family. I want to be part of have some sort of semblance of a normal life. I think it probably is difficult. Psychologically, it must be difficult, I would think.
It has to be. I mean, I really don't know any other sport. I mean, maybe that's kind of like an overreach, but I mean, it's not just like, like football players. Hi, I go away for Sunday. Hi, I'm a baseball player. Yeah, I have a 3-game series. I'm gone for 4 days, but you fly home. In Formula One, they show up at the track on a Tuesday and the race is Sunday, and then they leave Monday, and we're in the middle of a triple header right now. So it's 3 weeks gone. And like, yes, at some point your family can come and visit you, but you haven't been home. Like, you live out of a suitcase. Right.
And you're doing these sort of death-defying things every single week, multiple times. So I think about it in like a very tiny way. So before I became a full-time fiction writer, I was a reporter, and I would leave to go cover big events. So like in 2010, I spent 192 days on the road. And there does get in your brain like this idea that you are doing things for the adrenaline. And that was very much a thing when I decided to quit journalism. I wasn't sure if it took me a long time to actually quit, because you do get really addicted to that adrenaline. And, you know, obviously for them, it must be magnified by a great amount, because, you know, and when you see things like Michael Schumacher skiing the way he did, and, you know, doing these people doing other death-defying sort of extreme sports, you can understand why. There's something in their brain that makes them want to do that. Even like, so my husband, he raced motocross semi-professionally at one point in his life, and he is now 51, and he still rides motocross. He rides dirt bikes. You know, and there's still something in his brain that just clicks on that for this speed and danger. And it's like, I don't think you can turn that off as easily as, you know, as you think. And it must be hard for them.
It has to be. I think it's why we saw Kimi Räikkönen retire last year and then go race in Watkins Glen last month.
A lot of them do that. I mean, that's what Rubens Barrichello did too. That's why I interviewed him. He was here racing in the IRL league. So I live in St. Petersburg, Florida, where the IRL race begins. IRL circuit season begins here in St. Pete. So they race. We can actually hear the cars from our house. They race in the street like Monaco here, but it's not Monaco. It's St. Petersburg, Florida. But it's really pretty. And so they race in the streets. And so one day, you know, when they first came to St. Pete, the AP had me go do a little video with Rubens Barrichello. And my husband also saw him buying Diet Coke in local Publix. So
immediately,
he's the only one who recognized. My husband just like attacked him, and no one else knew who he was in the Publix but my husband.
I think about that all the time. If I ever get the opportunity to meet one of them, I'm sure Megan will be scraping my body off of the ground, and then I will be scraping her body off of the ground, because at the end of the day, like, they're our heroes. They're our idols. We respect them. We, you know, watch them every weekend. So to be able to meet one of them would be, you know, phenomenal. And no less in a Publix would be
bizarre. So, yeah. That was sort of that was one of the hardest things about, you know, trying to be realistic versus trying to fulfill romance reader expectations, was the knowing, especially after interviewing somebody like Rubens Barrichello and seeing some of the IRL drivers. I've also seen the Brazilian driver who's in the IRL. He was really big. I'm blanking on the name. He won a championship with IRL. He's from Brazil, but he has a house in Miami. I've seen him in person. Anyway, they're very short. They're not tall. Most of them are not very tall.
Okay, so when they did, I don't know if you saw it, they did a Beyond the Grid episode where they all ranked the height, and then they announced the height of all the drivers. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, like, Rubens Barrichello is very short,
tiny,
like my height, and I'm like 5'4". Because you have to be in that, you know, in the car. I mean, I think there's a couple of them there are a couple of them who are taller, you know, like 5'7", 5'10" kind of thing. I think there was one like particularly handsome one from England. I'm blanking on his name right now. I'm not. Perhaps.
George Russell,
or maybe an older driver. I'm not sure, but there are a couple of them that are a little taller.
Older one.
But for the most part, you know, they're pretty short. So that was a little difficult, you know, and that has been kind of difficult in my mind, trying to work that in realistically, because usually in romance novels, you know, the heroes are like 6'4", and I can't have a 6'4" tall hero in Formula One. That just would not be true to life at all.
It would not be realistic at all. And I think it would also, I think what's interesting is that it would set up, you know, if someone reads this book not being a Formula One fan, you know, like hockey romances are really big, but a lot of women aren't hockey fans, or that aren't Okay, let me take that back. A lot of women who read the four romance novels might not necessarily be hockey fans. So you could read this as like a non F1 fan, maybe get interested in Formula One and turn on the TV, meet them in real life and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. The book said they're 6'4" and muscular. Well, they're muscular, but they're lean.
Muscular, but they're very lean. Yes.
It's all in their neck.
That's been trying to get that. And I'm still actually in Burn. I'm thinking about playing with having the heroine be a little taller than him. I'm still kind of working that out in my mind.
I know we had talked about this when we met the first time, but have we talked about him or thought about him maybe having a thigh tattoo like Danny Ric?
I put that in.
I made the book.
Oh my gosh. You made the book.
I can even tell you that it's a
We love
tattoo.
that.
So the heroine's name is Lily, and it's a tattoo of a lily. And they are, how can I put this? Let me see if I can. Okay, so he wins a race, and she goes to his, you know how they have like their modular units, you know, like their traveling modular units, and he has a dressing room, and it's private. And she goes to celebrate with him. I mean, she doesn't set out to celebrate. She just goes to say, like, you know, congratulations, and things happen and things are taken off. And that's when she sees the tattoo.
I'm losing my mind.
Oh my gosh.
I made the book.
I'm not well.
I feel like that was a personal contribution. I'm going to claim that as my fame in my entire life, putting it on my LinkedIn bio right now. But I'm also going to say that is hot as shit.
It's really hot. Yep. It's really,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Expand myself with the book.
And he has a very colorful thigh tattoo of a lily. And that's when she realizes that he has never gotten over her.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait.
Sweet. So I'm starting to post this book on Wattpad in mid-September. So it will be posted in chapters, and then the edited version will be coming out like a paperback version in 2024. So if you want to read the early version, you can start in September.
Immediately starts planning that.
Megan and I will have
Yes.
Yeah. Megan and I will have weekly reading sessions where you can read me a chapter and I can read you a chapter like we did when we were kids.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. That is so cool. To me, it's cool that you're like, look, I'm writing this book. Like, oh, I got this idea. Let me just throw it in here.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I can do that. Although I'm, all the way up through the editing process, I can do that.
The whole writing process is insane to me because to me, I just don't ever think I'm going to be able to. I don't know if I have the like commitment to writing a novel. Was it hard to make the transition from like, hi, I write articles and I write, like longer interest piece, but nothing like, hi, I'm writing a book.
Yeah, I wrote some long narrative nonfiction, and I actually thought about writing nonfiction books, but fiction was far more fun, so I decided to do that. But yeah, it was hard. It was a hard transition because journalism is really dry, and romance, relies on emotion. Like that's the underpinning of all romance novels. I think my ultimate sort of career path in fiction will probably take me to mysteries. I really like writing crime fiction. I write very sort of gentle Agatha Christie-like funny Florida mysteries, and that's actually what I really love to do. I'm not really a sports romance writer. These are the only two books that I've written about sports stars, so it's very interesting that this is the one that got published.
Can we get a mystery at a St. Petersburg style IRL race?
That could be really interesting. That is actually something that I don't know if it has been done. That could be very interesting, actually. And that's an intriguing idea.
It's yours. I won't be able to write a book. I don't have the attention span.
You might. I don't know. If I can do it, I think anybody can do it.
I don't know about that. I'd be like 1,000 words in. I'd be like, okay, it's time for him to have sex. No character development, just right to the chase. That's incredible.
All vibes, no plot. That's really
I think
good.
it'd be way too much like, and she is literally writing about Daniel Ricciardo.
Probably on Wattpad, there's some Daniel Ricciardo fan fiction that you could write Daniel Ricciardo fan fiction. So nobody's stopping you from that.
Don't give
Nobody's
her any
stopping you.
ideas.
Katie, let's start working on my new pen name.
Oh my God.
Did you, you mentioned that you write your mysteries under a different name. Was there a reason you separated out the two?
Yeah, my mystery publisher. It's under a very slightly different name. It's under Tara, Tara. So I just took out 2 letters from my name. Yeah, because the cozy mystery, it's called cozy mystery because there's no sex, there's no swearing, and there's no gore, which are very different, as you can see from my romance. The cozy mystery readers want to be, they're very different than romance readers. The romance readers will read the cozy mystery. The cozy mystery readers may not read the sexy romance. And so for Amazon, especially for Amazon purposes where you have the also bots and the algorithm, I didn't want to mix those 2 audiences. So the publisher asked me to write. It's not that uncommon actually to write under a couple different names.
That's very intriguing.
I know some people who have 5 or 6 different pen names for various genres. And especially people who self-publish, sometimes they'll just try out, and if they want to write like a completely, they're writing alien romance or whatever, they try out a whole new pen name.
I love that. Eventually, would you consider, or is there never a time when you can mesh it all under your name?
Probably not. No, they're very different. They're not different in tone. If you read them, if you like the writing in Drive, you'll probably like the writing in my mysteries, but they're very different. And they're also, the writing in the mysteries, or the themes in the mysteries are probably more for slightly older people. And it really is more like a mystery puzzle, like who done it, really. I describe my mysteries as, I don't know if you've seen Only Murders in the Building.
Yes.
They're like Only Murders in the Building, but with Florida Man, basically. They're like, and it's set in like a Florida beach community in a coffee shop, and everybody's kind of weird and quirky, and people die, and the amateur sleuth, figures it out. And actually, there is there's a love story, there's a romance in there. It's just not super sexy, not like. And actually, strangely, Drive is one of my least steamy romances. Like, I have romances that are far steamier than this.
Good to know.
Good to know.
They're all on Wattpad. So I have romances that are really, really steamy.
What originally sparked your interest in writing romance? Was it you reading romance, or was it your just desire to try it?
I've always read romance since I was a teenager. But I was covering such horrible things as a journalist that I just wanted to write something that ended happily. I covered really, really terrible things.
I love that, like an outlet for joy. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's what kind of sparked what I think has been a resurgence in reading. I feel like more people now my age are talking about reading, sharing books, is because, we're all locked in our homes with really nothing to do, but also living in a time where we didn't really know what was going to happen in 6 months. Were we ever going to be able to travel internationally? Were we ever going to get to see our families again? And so it's kind of nice to go to a fantasy world that's not really fantasy.
Oh yeah, I think definitely. And I think the older that you get, the more you feel like, everything is just, going to hell, So you do rely on books to be that comfort space. And I think for romance and for cozy mystery, especially, I think that there's this idea of like a found family. Because as you get to book 3, Burn, Savannah and Dante are also in Burn, and Savannah is a friend of the heroine in Burn. So it's like in all of my books, especially my series, I try to have sort of a group of women who have come together, through circumstance or however, and they're friends, they're not rivals. And I think that is something romance can do particularly well.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like you have found a good support system as an author writing romance? Do you have other author friends? Do you have other Formula One
I have
friends?
other author friends. I have lots of author friends, both in real life and people I've met on the internet. And Wattpad is this really sort of magical place where you can meet lots of other writers. So I was just in Toronto 2 weekends ago and met lots of people who I've been talking to online for years. And we're going to have WattCon in Los Angeles in November. So I'll meet lots more people there. Wattpad is this magical place where you really can meet a lot of like-minded writers and readers. So Wattpad has 9 million unique readers a month, and they just it's amazing to I've self-published and I've traditionally published. I continue to traditionally publish in mystery, but there's nothing like Wattpad. I can put up a chapter and people will they'll read it immediately, and that instant gratification and the instant feedback is something that's so unique and special. That's one of the many reasons why I really love it there.
Do you ever change things based on the feedback you're given?
No, I don't change things based on the feedback, but sometimes if they sometimes it's really wonderful if they anticipate what's to come, and I can figure out how I'm going to change things from there. It just depends. If I'm writing a long serial, it's more like I wrote a very long mafia romance serial. Another Italian hero, but very different. And there were some things that I did tweak a little bit based on what readers were anticipating.
I think that is singularly unique to that site, because you get to actually let your readers be part of the process in a weird way.
It's really cool. Yeah, I actually have this theory also that when you read a book in a serial format and you're not binge reading it, you actually, or I do anyway, retain more of it in some ways. Like when I read serial novels and I'm anticipating like the next chapter in a couple of days or a week, I'll go back and reread and I'll think about the story. It forces you, when you're reading it live, not when it's finished, I think it forces you to kind of slow down and think about the story in different ways. So I think that's a really interesting connection that I have with my readers.
It kind of reminds me in a weird way of like English class back when you were in high school and college, where you're like, okay, we're going to read 1 through 3 and then we're going to like discuss it and pause. Mm-hmm. It almost inherently gives that discussion piece that we learned how to do in English class, but it's all virtually.
Right. Definitely. I feel that way about serial novels and about audiobooks. I find personally that I love listening to audiobooks, and I retain a lot more because I can't really binge. Like I can't read fast with audio. I can speed it up, but only to a certain degree. With books, if I'm enjoying it, I just binge it.
Just like, and more and more.
Yeah, exactly. But with audiobooks and with serial novels, you're forced to slow down. So I think that's an interesting way of storytelling.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, this has been amazing to talk to you about the writing process. Katie and I have a couple of Formula One questions. Mm-hmm. Ready, Katie? You want to go for it?
Sure. Yes, I would be happy to. What is your favorite part of the sport now?
Oh, favorite part of the sport. What it always is, just the glamour, the travel, the international locations, there's a real glamour factor about it that I love. Like I am not really into the stats and the strategy. I mean, I've read about them and such, but I think that the glamour and then the psychological part of what goes into driving is really fascinating to me. I like we were talking about the idea that, there's this thing in these drivers' brains that tell them against all, rational, instinctual, and all rational instinct that they should not be driving that fast. They do, and they do it really well. I think that makes the drivers really unique human beings, and I'm very fascinated with that.
What did you think about the glamour factor of the football helmets that they gave out on the podium in Miami?
Miami, I really wanted to go to Miami, and my husband did too, but it was so expensive. We used to live in Miami, and we were ready to go, but it was like we couldn't get tickets, and it was amazingly expensive. And then when we saw the whole like scene in Miami with the fake beach and the fake marina, it was so bizarro. And the fact that it wasn't anywhere near South Beach, it was literally like in the middle of Dade County. I don't know. Miami is such a weird and complex place, and where they put the stadium, a lot of people didn't really want it. There's a lot of issues in Miami, so I have mixed feelings. I wish they had held it downtown. I think there was a time that they did years ago where they did hold it in downtown Miami. I don't know if you could do that now, given just how big Miami's gotten, but I wish it had been held in downtown Miami as opposed to a track circuit that was built around the football stadium.
I wish they definitely would have held it downtown. I wish that maybe they wouldn't have handed out football helmets, and maybe they would have made sure that the podium didn't have Dan Marino like in every possible angle. Cause I feel like that was just, and you know what? I'm going to throw it out there. I'm wishing that maybe the glamour factor had played a role and that he didn't call Charles Leclerc Chuck Leclerc.
It's all very weird, all very strange. I don't know. Miami is an odd place. I don't know. But races in Florida, it's like Texas. They know that it's hot. I don't know about that. Must be very, very hard for them as well. I would encourage you to, if you want to come to a race that is similar but not quite the the cost factor of Formula One, I would encourage you to come to IRL in St. Pete. It really, like, it's very affordable and very accessible, and you can get excellent seats, and you can sort of feel a little bit of the glamour, and I think that you might really enjoy it. And they're open wheeled cars, and it's pretty easy to get a pit pass and just wander around. So I would really encourage you to do that. And if you come, I'd love to hang out and meet with you, because it would be wonderful.
Yeah,
you might even be able to get like press passes. One year I did get press passes, and they actually have like the press center right next door to the Dali Museum. And it was very nice. And you could just sit there and just have snacks and watch the race. And it's a wonderful circuit. I would highly encourage that.
I love this idea.
We may just have to take you up on that offer and come join you
during the season. I think it's March. Some years it's been in March. Some years it's been in April. And so it's not usually super hot. And the city is very accessible, but you get the racing, and you get like the sounds, and you get the real street racing feel. So if you haven't seen a street circuit, that is really like a very easy, accessible place to do it.
Okay, Katie, let's book it in. Let's do it.
Do it. You can do a special
book it in.
episode. We could do an episode from.
Yes. Hands down.
Yeah.
So in.
Yeah. Do it.
So in.
Okay.
All right. So one of our last questions, we have to know, what team and what driver do you support?
Oh, well, as far as teams, Ferrari.
For sure.
Yeah.
You have to in your house.
My dad and my husband are both Ferrari fans, Ferrari all the way. I'm very partial to Lewis Hamilton. As far as a driver, I really like his message. I really like his boldness. He's a vegan. I'm a vegan. He has a rescue dog named Roscoe. I really like Lewis and all of his. I appreciate his boldness. I really like him. I find him extremely attractive as well.
He's not Italian.
Oh, and here's the other thing about Lewis Hamilton. For a long time, he dated Winnie Harlow. I don't know if you know who she is. Mm-hmm. She's a model, and she has vitiligo. I have vitiligo, but you can't really tell because I have makeup on and such. But she has vitiligo, and the fact that he dated a woman with very visible vitiligo endeared him to me, along with Roscoe, the dog. So yeah.
I'm a huge Lewis Hamilton stan. I mean, he's literally It's right here.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Immediately hung it up.
And I have Roscoe on my
That's
sweatshirt.
Amazing. Wow. Where did you get that? Is that really him?
Yes, it's really him. This is a Racing Thread sweatshirt, and we'll send you our discount code, but you can get 15% off. I'll just tell everyone, it's Dirty Driving, no spaces, all caps.
Good job with the ad, Katie.
So,
throw that in there.
Nice.
Yeah, throw our little ad in there.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, definitely. All of those things endear me to Lewis.
Well, and I mean, in your life,
he's
you can't
incredible.
not be a Ferrari fan.
Right. Exactly.
How does your husband feel about this year? Has he been throwing things, yelling at the TV? I have been.
Yeah, he rolls with it. You know, he rolls with it. He loves Formula One. He loves MotoGP and motocross, like even more than that. So he probably right now he's actually watching James Bubba Stewart, who seems to be on. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a big motocross guy.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to have a podcast that I think never ends. Honestly, like the man is just on TV all the time. I don't know. My husband watches him all the time. Like there's been this one motocross podcast that my husband started watching at the beginning of the pandemic. And I swear to God, it's like the same three guys are still talking. I don't even know how that's possible, but it's like they're just talking. Like they talk about things, like details in their lives that like the most mundane details, but my husband eats it up. He's super into dirt bikes, and like my husband restores vintage dirt bikes for a living.
That's
so,
awesome.
Like we're very steeped in motorcycles.
That's awesome. Our uncle, who we talk Formula One with all the time, he is a huge MotoGP fan. So I understand. And I'm fairly confident that I am like your husband in my relationship, where I am constantly watching F1 things and the intern is like, does it end? I thought they weren't racing this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, and my husband with MotoGP, he was like, I woke up one morning and it was the final race of Valentino Rossi, you know, and he just had like tears in his eyes. He was like very emotional about that. Valentino Rossi was, you know, like the king of MotoGP. So that was a pretty big deal. But yeah, he's been very frustrated with Ferrari. I think, you know, overall in recent years, he's been frustrated with Ferrari.
No, I feel his pain. I literally sit on the couch and I watch and I take notes and I research things, and then halfway through the race, I like throw something and I scream at the TV. And I wish I knew more Italian, because it'd be way better if I was screaming at Ferrari in Italian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. But no, it's all motocross in our house at the moment. So.
I love that. It's so cool that it's not just singular, like one singular racing.
No, it's lots
series.
of racing. Like he knows nothing about he's been in America for 30 years, but he still knows nothing about football. Like one time during Super Bowl, I don't know anything about football either, but he was like, isn't there like a big like football game on this weekend? And it was the Super Bowl. Like he knows nothing about that, but MotoGP, Formula One, motocross, and a little bit with soccer. A little bit, but he really likes, you know, even like the Tour de France. He's really into things on wheels. Like that is very much his default.
I like that. Things on wheels that go fast. Vroom, vroom,
exactly.
fast.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I cannot tell you like how many times, like how exciting this was, how cool this was, but also just like, thank you for your time and wanting to.
Really.
No, this was amazing, and I cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. So this is the point where we let you tell us where everyone can find you.
You can find me on my website, tamaralush.com, TAMARALUSH.com, or on Instagram at @the.book.lush, the book Lush. So I try to combine both of my pen names on Instagram. So and you can also find me on Wattpad under my name, Tamara Lush, no spaces. So.
Where can they buy your books?
You can buy them anywhere ebooks are sold, or on Wattpad, or at like your local Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. Generally Barnes and Noble if you want the hardcover, or your independent, you can order from your independent bookstore.
And
and support your local bookstore.
Support your local bookstore. And I definitely recommend that if you are a female, you like motorsports, read the books, but also go check out her website, because my favorite thing when I Googled to find your website a couple of weeks ago was that her tag is sexy books, sharp women. So I'm all about that. I think it's amazing. So everyone go give her some love. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.